Okay, so the good news is we're live on Facebook. So hello, Facebook.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Um, yeah, so I've posted to the Office Ops Facebook page. So hopefully we will have some people following in and who wanted to learn more about how to close a business. So how are you doing today, Abid?
I'm doing well. It's a classic day in a lawyer's life with a million things going on, but I'm happy to be here and uh, help go through this interesting topic.
Okay, yeah, same with me. Things are going well. It is a little bit rainy, so I've been hearing a lot of rain and birds and things on my cam here, but I think it's gonna be okay. So let's wait a minute or two to see if anyone else shows up. I see we have some participants here. We have um, sorry, this is the little button. Okay, so yeah, we have Preston from Office Ops is here, and someone from Front 17 is also here. So we will watch the participants keep joining and start in just a second.
Sure, sounds good.
So you can see my screen, my closing your business. Um,
Fantastic. I'm trying to figure out how you got a photo of somebody. I guess that's a stock photo, right?
you'll
Was,
see that I did a
was your
really,
search term
really
for that like I'm worried?
honestly, my stock photo game has gone up a lot since I started doing a webinar. So I did search. Yeah, this is concerned female business owner number one.
Nice. That's great.
um, okay, so it's 2:01. I think we should go ahead and get started because
Sure.
we have
So,
some basic stuff to talk about. So yeah, so here we are, closing your business, the ultimate decision. So this is a webinar about the decision to close your business and also what happens when you decide to close your business. This webinar is presented by Fund 17, whom I've worked with in the past. I do a couple things which I'll tell you about. And then I also decided to ask Abid to come in and help since he has a legal perspective. I know he knows a lot about small businesses and he's worked with a lot of different entrepreneurs on their different legal issues, especially when it comes to closing down, which is one of the biggest decisions you can make in a business. It is as big as the decision to open it. So, okay, so this is me. This is a little bit about myself. My name is Teresa Kenny. I've been in New Orleans for 7 years, which is about the amount of time I've had my company. I primarily help entrepreneurs and small business owners with human resources and financial operations in their businesses. I've worked with a bunch of different startups. I've worked in oil and gas, food, film, theaters, nonprofits, and that's really where my expertise comes in. Since I've seen so many different business models and so many different processes, I'm really able to take the best practices from all those and bring them across industries. So that's my specialty, and I started Office Ops specifically just to help the small business community here in New Orleans and Louisiana, because I realized my skill set, which is analytical, paperwork driven, is a really good match for entrepreneurs who are driven, don't want to necessarily look at all the details, and want to make sure that they have someone in their corner when it comes to finances and human resources. So that is me, and my business is Office Ops, and there's three of us. So we work with a variety of different startups and nonprofits and small businesses here in New Orleans. So, and then we have Abid.
I've been a practicing attorney for about 13 and a half years. Um, and Before that, between law school and practicing as an attorney, I was in various businesses, some startup businesses, some very large businesses, and non-legal marketing and business positions. I have a really wide variety of and viewpoints into different businesses, small businesses that are starting up, businesses that have gone out of business, large businesses that are successful and then have gone through various levels of trouble. And then as an attorney, I've seen all of those different formations of businesses and types of businesses and the challenges that they face. And I've been practicing as a business lawyer for the last almost 14 years. Um, a lot of that was started out in Texas, and then I've been in New Orleans for about 7.5 years. So I am currently a partner at Sternberg, Knackery and White. We're a business law firm, and we work on business matters, litigation matters. We do some personal injury as well. There's a lot of asset protection and estate planning as well. And they brought me in to work with their business group as well as develop their intellectual property group. And so, and right now, the firm itself is very focused on COVID related issues. We've also taken on a bankruptcy practice because we do anticipate that in a few months, as the impact of the virus takes hold of the business environment, there's going to be a lot of downturns in business, which, sounds very pessimistic to say, but if we're not realistic about it, then we can't handle it as it happens. And so there are a lot of issues that are directly related to what we're talking about today.
Okay, yeah, we'll get into more into that in a few slides. So we have our silent partner here, Fund 17, which was really the catalyst to bring us together. They are a nonprofit organization, and they combat opportunity inequality in New Orleans by providing entrepreneurs with the tools and skill sets they need to be able to build their business, grow their business, and make sure their business stays in business. One thing they wanted me to mention is that they're accepting applications for their Capital Ready program, which is a program that helps, again, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, small business owners get to that next step where they can really start to invest in their business and be able to get things like bank loans and stuff like that. So they are here helping us get out the word, and they're a good partner to make sure that Abid and I are able to reach out and help other small business owners in New Orleans. Okay, so just a brief overview. We already went through who we are. We're going to go through some common reasons businesses close. We're going to go through a checklist. We will do a brief Q&A at the end. So if you do have questions, you can hold on to those until the end and then put them in your Q&A box. We'll go through those in order and make sure you get all your questions answered. Then we'll give you contact information about how to get a hold of Abid and myself if you do have further questions. A lot of what we're going to go over is general. So if you want real specific questions about where your business is, then you would reach out to us and we can help you in those different areas. So without further ado, we will talk about the ultimate decision, which is closing your business. So on the right, I just have a big question, which is why? Why are we doing this? Like, why is this something we have to talk about? It's not a very popular topic, but it is a very natural part of the business life cycle. We see all different sizes of businesses. They may have served their purpose from, you created an LLC for a rental property. You no longer have that rental property. You want to close that business too. You created and scaled a giant organization, and now you're having issues, and now you need to close the whole organization down. So the scale of how we close a business can change a lot. But it's a very, very common thing. I mean, most businesses are going to end up closing, or there will be some kind of exit at some point. So what Abid and I know, we know that if you plan for this and you have a strategy, it's going to save you a lot of a headache, a lot of stress, and a lot of expense. There's many ways to do this wrong and only a few ways to do this correctly. So the more information you have when you go to make these decisions, the better off you'll be, and the fewer challenges you will come across. And then lastly, I just want to make sure that people who are contemplating a decision like this, since it's such a large decision, we want to make sure that they have the confidence to be able to move forward, as opposed to thinking about it, not deciding, and having the struggling business cause more trouble and stress for the business owner. So that's what we want to be able to do, is make sure that the entrepreneurs have that confidence to know that they're making the right decision.
So let me jump in too with a comment. Part of ending a business is I mean, for most people, it's a very emotional decision too, because, you spent a lot of time kind of creating this is your baby, and, have to decide whether it's time to terminate the baby. And so it's a very emotional choice, and it's one that I think people have a lot of hesitancy in being able to make. And so part of this is also keeping you informed, so you know when it's time to decide to make a decision that's not an emotional decision. You're going to have a lot of emotions wrapped up with terminating a business. And there's all sorts of issues with potentially a sense of failure or whatnot. But as Teresa mentioned, there, a lot of times a business does come to a natural close, and we're going to go through some of these issues in a little bit, but especially right now, there are unforeseen circumstances that can cause the end of any business as a result of what's happening, with the virus. And so, um, being informed will help you make this decision with the least amount of emotions. And I think that's how you're going to be able to get through something like this. Because if you make emotional decisions, you will often make bad ones.
Very, very true. So yeah, that's a good segue to this slide, which is really closing is a really deeply personal question, and no one's going to be able to answer that for you, except for the business owner or partners. There's a lot of reasons people will close a lot, and it is very tied up into personal finances, personal health and wellness. That can make it a challenge to reinvest extra time and energy into your business. And then a lot of business owners will just get this feeling that they don't want to do it anymore. It's not making them money. They are putting in too much time and energy, and they feel like they're maybe working for free. So they may be looking for a way to take off that emotional and physical drain on themselves and find a way to just let it rest. So when you look at your own business, you have to understand how deeply tied that business is to yourself, and how you're going to be able to manage your personal side, your personal relationships, personal finances, and other things when you make that decision to close. So most people, I feel like most business owners really start making this decision by thinking and feeling in their heart. But what Abid and I are here to do is to go from your heart and your feeling and into more concrete issue identification, looking at your actual numbers and making decisions based on exactly what Abid said, not emotions. You want to make decisions based on facts and options and best practices. So
I also think that people start making this decision way too late, um, because you're so embedded in it. You want this thing to survive, and yet you can see the writing on the wall. And somebody looking at something objectively can see the writing on the wall months before people start acting. And by then, your actions are almost too late, because the things you could have done up front to kind of prepare for a termination of a business, when you should have started earlier, I think is something that maybe some of these issues that we're talking about today will help you see better, so that you can step back and say, okay, this is just not working, and I do need to prepare for a transition.
yeah, a really good point that I read during my research for this is that you want to make sure you're closing your business before you're forced to close your business,
Correct. Yeah.
before something external or something large makes it so you can no longer sustain it.
Right.
That's the kind of situation that will cause you actual damage. Making an intentional close is going to be something that will help protect you. Okay. So the next slide here is identify the problem. And so you want to look at your situation and be honest. Abid and I chatted. For the most part, businesses are ending because they are not filling the goal, the original goal of why they were created. Usually the goal of creating a business is to make money and to support yourself and your family and build a legacy and have a business that will really sustain itself. So when you look at your gut feeling of how is this not working, then you have to go the next step of actually identifying the problem and figuring out what the issue is. So for me, this is about bookkeeping. For Abid, this may be about something else. But for me, identifying financial problems in your business comes down to having good bookkeeping and actively working with that data to make sure that you understand how it's working and the way your business isn't running the way it should be. So you need to be regularly in touch with your profit and loss statements. You need to be reviewing your bank statements, and you need to be making sure that you have all that in an accounting software so you can run analysis and look at different scenarios in an objective way. So when you're looking at the P&L, one of the things that I like to look at is just over time. You can look at a profit and loss over the time of your business by month, and you can see, was there ever a point in which your business were breaking even? At what point did things start to go less profitable than they were? So how would you identify legal problems, Abid? I guess people usually let you know when there's a legal
Oh,
problem.
I was going to jump in with what you were saying. I think that for a lot of small businesses, people get very caught up in the day to day, but they don't step back and look at big picture trends. Big picture trends are a really good way to not only forecast if problems need to be corrected, but if you're having a fatal problem that you can't resolve, or on the flip side, how to capitalize on something that's going well. So I think when you're a small business owner, you have to both be able to do day-to-day issues as well as look at big picture stuff. So on, from a numbers perspective, looking at the profit and loss statements from a month by month or a year on year, will give you an analysis of what's happening. You can also identify if you are a cyclical business and, like, for example, every year in August you have a slow month, you need to plan for that, ahead of time, so that you can arrange for that. From a legal perspective, I find that most small business owners are doing the minimum required to get through whatever project or thing that they're trying to do. And then what ends up happening is that typically something catastrophic occurs, and at that point they come and see their attorney. I always find it funny when I'm networking or talking to business owners, and I meet a small business owner and I tell them I'm an attorney, and they say, "Well, I hope I never have to come see you." And I think that's kind of funny, because my response to that usually is, "Do you tell your accountant you hope you never have to see them until the IRS audits you?" And the answer is always no. Then I say, "Well, why is it that you think the same of your attorney?" Like, we are not here. I mean, of course, we are here to solve issues when that happens, but a good business lawyer is a really good partner to a small business owner. And so, my goal is to never let it get to a catastrophic situation. And so we are often working with our clients to look at what things are potentially problematic down the road. Is there a vendor agreement that could go bad? Is there a balloon loan payment that needs to be thought about now, so that a year from now, when that payment is due and you don't have it, you're not in default? Is there a lease that we can review right now, especially right now with everything that's going on, that might impact your relationship with your commercial landlord? There are so many different things that people don't pay attention to until something goes wrong. And that's when attorneys become unbelievably expensive, because the legal system is very, very costly when you're in a mess.
Okay, yeah, that seems to be about what happens with bookkeepers. People say, I need you, and then they don't really want to talk about it. So what I see usually, profit and loss, and being profitable is one of the main issues here. But what I see is when a business starts to become less profitable, they engage less with their financials, right? Which is why the last slide was so important about being honest. And that's why it's also important to work with professionals, because those professionals are going to be honest and objective regardless. So profitability is one of the main reasons that businesses are going to close. That's slightly different from cash flow, which I'll get into the next slide. But essentially, this is about your break-even point. So how many fixed costs do you have to help you produce the thing that you're producing? And how many sales do you need to make to be able to cover those costs? if you're not profitable, you're going to see a number of things happen. So, number one, your profit and loss will show that you're not profitable. But for two, you'll start to see that the owner is not making money necessarily. They're not taking draws, they're not able to pay themselves. That creates strain on the owner and then makes them less inclined to invest in their business. So, you're also going to see, this is something that I would like Abid to also talk about, but you're going to see personal debt start to stack up. People may start supporting their business with personal credit cards or personal loans and start commingling those funds. So can you talk about why that's a bad idea, Abid?
Yeah, so I guess this will dovetail into some of the things that I'll cover in a little bit, but it's really important to think about what your legal structure is and how to protect that structure because that structure protects you personally. Um, I think long gone are the days of where I think most people realize that you need to go set up an LLC for a business at minimum, and it's one of the reasons why LLCs are the most popular form of entity in the country. I think most people are not operating businesses as sole proprietors, but if they are, there's a huge danger that the sole proprietor, if there's any, legal liabilities or lawsuits or judgments, then the sole proprietor is personally liable. And what that means for a lot of people is that, if there's a judgment against you, they can come after what's in your bank account. And so that's a huge liability that you want to make sure you avoid. And you avoid that by creating an entity where and the two most common forms of entities are LLCs or corporations. But in both of those situations, what I see a lot of times is people will go to the Louisiana Secretary of State, they'll form an LLC, and then they think they're ready to go. They may or may not create a separate bank account, although I think that's an absolute must. And even if they create a separate bank account for the business, they're not operating with enough discipline such that they have the flow of money that shows what clearly the company earned versus what they're paying themselves as individuals, whether it's in the form of a distribution or through salary. And so, those are all issues that I can help people with, or Teresa can definitely help people with, and we work a lot together on making sure those systems are in place so that there's a clear delineated flow of money, of how the business earns its money. If you start taking business income and depositing it into personal accounts, even a little bit, you're commingling those funds. And that is a very easy way for somebody to pierce the corporate shield and come after you as somebody who, come after you personally, even if it's your business that has incurred the debt. So, thinking about how you keep your business in good order and compliant is a very big and important component um, in terms of how you run your business as well as how you terminate your business.
Yeah. And then one of the other things I wanted to say about profit and loss. So you'll see the owner usually stops getting paid first, and then you'll see fixed costs can really cause a lot of struggle. So let's say that you have a consulting business and they have all salaried employees. You're going to be in a situation where those fixed costs are too high despite the fluctuation of what's going on in your business. So if you can't shut off your rent, your salaried employees, or other fixed expenses, then you're going to not be able to put yourself in sleep mode, and your runaway train of business expenses is going to keep going until something changes. So I'm going to briefly get into cash flow. Cash flow is similar to profitability, but has some differences. Let's say that you're, investing. This is more about if you're investing or you're creating a new vaccine, for example, and you thought you needed $200,000 to make it, but you actually need more cash. That is a situation in which your business is not necessarily not going to be profitable. It's just you don't have the cash to keep it going. So another example of that would be a seasonal business, a restaurant that was profitable for part of the year. They don't have the cash flow to get through 3 or 4 months of a summer closure, so they're thinking about closing. It doesn't mean your business model is broken, but it does mean you need to have access to capital. You need to have savings, and you need to have a better plan to be able to not run aground. So this is more about like growth businesses, startups, businesses with a lot of fluctuation. Um, that's really going to be a cash flow issue, whereas profitability is like a constant. It doesn't really change. Cash flow is you may have lots of cash one time and less and no cash in another period, but that's more about fluctuations. Any questions about that, Abid? Or good. So this is the next one. This is sudden events. So this is going to take anyone by surprise. So profitability happens over time. Your business doesn't become super profitable. Cash flow has a lot of fluctuations. Sudden events is you were profitable, you had savings in your account, you had a plan, and then something crazy happened. So your supply chain crumbles. You can no longer get the product you were selling. All of your employees left at the same time. You had theft or fraud. There was a disaster, possibly a pandemic, fire accident, breakdown of major equipment. I put lawsuit in there, but Abid knows there's all kinds of things that can really come out of the blue. But yeah, sudden events can be a big reason businesses close. So a lot of these sudden events, they cost a lot of money to get past them. So a pandemic would cost 6 months of savings to get past. A breakdown of a major equipment, let's say you're a brewery and your big piece of equipment blows, that's $30,000 to get over. You had an accident, your building burned down. These are catastrophic events that require a plan or capital to overcome them. And this is a hard one. This is a difficult one. Did you have any thoughts or
yeah, sure. Let me jump in. So I think that one of the things that I often see when people are starting businesses, and a lot of times they can't do anything about it, but they really don't have enough of a cushion for sudden events. And it's really difficult, to know what certain of these events are going to be. But then I find that people, let's say that somebody wants to get into, a rental property business, right? And even though they know that, let's say that they don't have a lot of cushion up front, they purchase, one or more rental properties, and then they get tenants in there, and they're just generating revenue and income and rental income and whatnot. They know that, or they even thought about it in their business plan, where they needed to take a percentage of all the rental income coming in and put it away in the event that repairs needed to be made. So like, and large scale events are like, say, an HVAC breaking down, which always happens in June, right? So let's say that they have a rental property and they know they should be putting money away because they know they're going to have a $5,000 to $10,000 expense in June, but they don't have it. And then they've gotten, let's say, a year or two goes by and they've gotten lucky and nothing's happened. Now they don't have the standard business practice of putting money away for that cushion. And they think, oh, what could possibly go wrong? And then something does. That's a kind of sudden event that's not quite the scale of pandemic, but the mentality is still the same, which is you did not think about what would happen when a crisis situation occurs. And that crisis can be huge, like it is right now, or it could just be a couple of small things. And if you don't have enough of a cushion, it's going to hurt or it's going to be fatal. And that's what I find a lot of people don't think about. A lawsuit is a great example of a situation where I couldn't tell you what a lawsuit will cost. It all depends on what the claim is. But even simple slip and falls in your business can cost you or your insurer tens of thousands of dollars to settle something out. And so, legal costs are extremely expensive. And if you don't plan for them up front, or if you don't take steps up front, they can one legal issue, one lawsuit in the life of a small or startup business could take that business out of business.
Yeah, and you'll see these issues can compound each other. Some people might just have a sudden event, but if they had been profitable and did not have cash flow issues and were able to stock funds away, they won't be as affected by sudden events. But let's say that you have a business that has a harder time being profitable. They're not going to be able to have the access to capital, or even just the savings, or even the relationships with vendors and suppliers and customers to be able to weather the sudden event storms. And all that stuff, unfortunately, does affect, your younger businesses, your smaller businesses, more than it's going to affect larger businesses, just because there's less of a buffer and you have less of a reputation. So, and fewer resources to draw on.
Sure.
All right. So now we're at Abid's favorite slide, which
Right.
is legal disputes causing businesses to close, which nobody wants that, but
Yeah. So, I mean,
it's
there's a number of different ways that, legal disputes can occur. So, and I think I want to start talking through this not only in terms of the types of disputes that can occur, but also how, the types of legal issues that can come up when you're thinking about closing your business. So, as I'd mentioned before, that you've got a bunch of corporate issues that relate to the type of entity you have, and the type of entity you have it makes a very big difference on how you're going to either get legal issues or disputes, and or how you're going to close your business. So, for example, if you are a sole proprietor, you need to figure out one of the biggest issues with respect to closing your business is, have you settled your debts? Have you made sure that you've paid off your creditors and that nothing is owed or outstanding? And if you're a sole proprietor and you don't have a corporate shield, then that means that you are personally responsible for all the debts of your business. If you're an LLC, you have to make sure that, as a member of that LLC, you have fulfilled all your obligations to all your creditors. And I think we have a slide coming up next that talks about some of the automated ways that you can terminate a business with the Secretary of State. And you have to be very careful about how you fill out those forms. Because if you're an LLC, or if you're, a C Corp, then there are certain formalities that you have to go through in order to make sure that you've terminated your business carefully. Other issues that come up when you're in the middle of, either closing, or other things that come up that can make you think about closing are, what are obligations with your vendors and your suppliers? So do you have recurring contracts? Do you have contracts that have a timeline that you have to maintain? And what are the damages provisions, or what are penalties or whatnot if you terminate early? If you terminate those contracts early, then who is responsible? Is there a personal guarantor? A lot of times when you sign commercial leases, there's going to be a personal guarantee. And just because your business goes out of business doesn't mean that you don't have an obligation. In fact, especially now with a lot of businesses about to go under with COVID and everything, it would not surprise me if commercial landlords start going after the personal guarantors very, very seriously, because that's how they're going to get their payment that they're owed. So
a little scary.
yeah, you have to look at all of your contracts. You have to look at where you stand with your contracts, and you have to do a real assessment that if you go under, what's going to happen, and who's left holding the bag, right?
Yeah, as well as loans, credit cards, lines of credit, even
all-
bank accounts. If they've gone negative, they can become a liability also.
That's exactly right. And then internally, you have to see what your obligations are to your employees. There's a lot of issues that COVID has brought up with respect to furloughing your employees, or the PPP program. A lot of things that my law firm, Sternberg, Nackery and White, are very familiar with. And so we've been helping a lot of clients deal with those issues. But if you are ultimately deciding to go out of business, or if you're closed right now and not coming back, you really have to think about what you owe your employees. Do you still owe them vacation pay? Do you still owe them hours that they have worked and they're legally entitled to payment? And those need to be on the top of your list in terms of paying off, because you do not want employee issues if you're terminating your business or closing your doors.
Yeah, let me just say a few things about employees. A lot of people ask when you should notify employees. Definitely after you made the decision. You don't want to let them know necessarily before you've made that decision, because they could leave early, leave you holding the bag. take intellectual property, or it could cause more issues. So I would say make a decision to close, decide on kind of your time frame and your dates, and then you'll have something to tell your employees. I'm closing in a month, 2 months. Here's what you'll be paid. I can or cannot offer severance. Here's your vacation days. So you can give
I would
yourself a
say,
little bit of time to sort that out, but
yeah. And
they
I
do
would
need
say
to be
I
informed.
would give a strong recommendation to have any communication with your employees after you make that decision is reviewed by your attorney or your accountant to make sure that you're not overpromising, or you're not, because again, these are all emotional decisions, and you maybe feel really terrible about having to let go of an employee because you're closing your doors. You do not want to say something that will give them, a claim against you down the road. And so you want to make sure the things that you're saying to them are gonna are going through a legal review to make sure that there's nothing that's going to come and bite you later.
And you don't want to cause additional financial strain. So even if you really want to give severance, or this person deserves 4 months, or you really have to be realistic about what you can afford, especially if you're going through some kind of liquidation
Right.
proceedings.
Right. And then so employment issues are a big part of this, obviously. But then ultimately, what are your relationships with your partners, or other members in the company? Some members may be silent investors. Other members may be really active. Um, if it's a corporation, you may have a board that you have to make sure that the board is approving, and then you're collecting votes properly. What you don't want is anybody coming back later and saying you did not close this company properly, or I never consented to you closing this company, and the operating agreement doesn't allow you to close this company without getting my vote. You want to make sure that everything you're doing is above board and that you're talking through these issues. But sometimes it could very well be the case that the reason you're closing the company is because you and your partner are not getting along. Especially during difficult times like this, you could be having all sorts of issues with your business partner, which may be causing you to terminate the business, or what's essentially known as a business divorce, which is can sometimes be just as ugly as human divorces, right? And so there are a lot of issues there where it's very important that you go get counsel early. And along those lines, even if you have a corporate, let's say that you and a business partner are having issues, and your company has a corporate attorney, that corporate attorney is conflicted out of representing either you or your business partner, because now you have conflict. You have a conflict of interest.
So
And
that's a
so
good question. So you can get your own lawyer.
you should get your own
Yeah,
lawyer.
you should get your own lawyer
And not only that,
outside of the
but the
business.
company's lawyer should not get involved in a squabble between the partners or the members. And if they do, then they're potentially doing unethical legal advice. They're giving unethical advice, because they should, it's one thing to mediate when both parties consent to it, but a corporate lawyer's job is to stay neutral and to represent the company's best interest. And so when partners or members in a company fight, at that point, they should get their own attorneys, just to get counsel. Sometimes the attorneys don't even need to get involved. I counsel a lot of clients where I tell them how to negotiate or what points to negotiate. And then I don't come in till the tail end when, an agreement has been reached, and then I'm just papering the agreement. So, because a lot of people will get defensive if one party, quote, lawyers up. That's a bad thing, apparently. I don't think so, but people get pretty defensive about that. And one party gets a lawyer, then the other party has to get a lawyer, and suddenly now it's escalated. A good business lawyer will help people deal with issues up front, and in whatever capacity is needed. And so when parties have those issues, it's important that you go get your own legal counsel. And the sooner you do that, the sooner you can identify issues and not walk into a landmine that you didn't foresee because you weren't even thinking about that legal issue.
Okay. Next slide. Secretary of State.
Yeah, so this is a slide that I put in, and just as an example, one of my entities before I joined Sternberg, Nackary and White, I was a solo lawyer, and my entity was Hussain Law LLC. So I went on the Secretary of State's website, and I just went through the process of terminating the business. I didn't follow through, but I just wanted to get the screenshots. I just wanted to show that it's really important when you get to the screenshot, or when you get to the screen where you're actually putting in information to terminate the business. What looks like very simple checkboxes has huge legal ramifications. Okay. And so the biggest thing the two biggest issues I wanted to tell you is that one, when you go to the Secretary of State, the only option to terminate a business is the affidavit to dissolve. And when you go through that affidavit to dissolve, and if you look at it, you are basically swearing that the business is no longer doing any business, no longer owes any debts, and does not own any property, and and that if it is dissolved by filing an affidavit with the Secretary of State, everybody who's signing to it is signing and has the authority to sign. And once you file this document, there is no way to make changes to that other than a court order. So getting a court order means getting an attorney and filing something in a court, and that's never ever cheap. Okay, so the first step is obviously making this decision to close your business is a huge one, but then the next step is that you can't make missteps by just filing something like this. And once you file, you have to make sure everything you're doing is truthful. So if you are making changes to the Secretary of State, and for example, you're fighting with one of your partners and you alone did not have authority to close the business, that is a massive lawsuit waiting to happen, because at that point you're acting without authority from all the other members, and at that point the other members have potential of suing you, as well as suing the company to reinstate the company. So
And they make it so easy online. It looks like you can just check a
that's
box and be
the point.
done, but that is
That's the
not.
point. That's the point, is that they make it easy, but that one screen has massive repercussions. You have to be really careful. And up until recently, there was actually a checkbox on it that people didn't even know they were checking, where if you filed it, you were assuming personal liability for any debts that you did not settle before filing that document. So now imagine you're an LLC, you're done with business, you decide to close. So you go ahead and file this form and you fill it out and you send it in. And then essentially the Secretary of State says, okay, business is closed. But then you still have liabilities that you incur because things happened before you actually closed up. And those companies or those creditors come and sue you for some reason. Guess who they're going to sue? They're going to sue you personally because the business is no longer operating. So, my ultimate recommendation in this is a much longer conversation than we have time for here. My ultimate recommendation for this screen is don't do the if you're ready to close your business, don't go do the Secretary of State stuff on your own. It may look simple, but it has massive ramifications. Talk to an attorney, talk to an accountant, make sure that you have all your ducks in a row. And then, a lot of times I'll not even file a termination to the Secretary of State if we want to leave the business running for some time, even though all business operations have stopped. So there are reasons to keep things alive and going with the Secretary of State. And if you're filing your taxes, you're filing your public information report every year, but business essentially has stopped. There's a way to leave this going for some time. Don't do the Secretary of State dissolution without talking to people first. Okay, it's a huge recommendation.
Yeah, I would recommend a
That be your
lawyer.
one big take. Don't do this on your own.
Accountants, I don't know if they would read all the fine print
Right.
around some of this stuff. Okay, so just briefly, we went through some of the common reasons businesses close. So maybe you're thinking in your head, well, maybe that wasn't that bad, or oh wow, I have a number of these risk factors. Maybe now really is the time. So that's kind of what you need to evaluate. How bad is it? How many issues are you really facing? and how many personal resources do you have available to you, whether it's time, energy, money, friends helping you, to be able to make changes. So I'm going to go through there's a couple different ways this can play out. My business is working, but I need to make some changes. So you need to find a mentor, make additional investments, bring in, some new staff, make changes. The second category I would call, it's not working, but I want to keep trying. So this is where you have to really dig deep and make some serious changes to your business, structural changes, maybe layoffs, changing what you're selling, a pivot, getting in new investors, financing, hiring a coach. So this is, my business will not survive if it stays the way it is, but I want to keep it and I want to make it work. That's a lot of work. That's outside of the scope of what we're really doing here. But
yeah, but if you are in that place, you definitely want to talk to people like us because, for example, first of all, you have to make sure that the numbers support what you're trying to do. And the second thing is you have to make sure that your legal structure supports what you're trying to do. Sometimes you may need an influx of cash, which means that you might be going out there looking for investors. Well, that's going to trigger you making corporate changes and making sure that you can go out and raise some money.
Yeah, realistically, this step is all about investment. Whether or not it's you investing into new products or you investing in new advertising or you hiring a coach or being able to invest in legal and accounting. This would be that step there.
Sure.
And then this one, it's not working and you don't think you can keep trying to work on it. So that's why we're here. So there's a couple options. You close, which is what we're discussing here. You can sell, you can transfer it to a person, or you can file for bankruptcy. So Abid, I don't know a whole lot about the difference between filing for bankruptcy. So I don't know if you can mention some of that. What's the difference between that and closing?
Well, bankruptcy is a whole different game than just closing your business. Closing your business is clean. Bankruptcy is not. And there's personal bankruptcy and there's business bankruptcy. Essentially, it's a way to either restructure your business, depending on the type of bankruptcy. It's a way to restructure your business or a way to determine how to allocate the debts that you owe, and either some of them will get written off because they won't get paid, or some creditors will get paid. I'm grossly oversimplifying, and if any of my bankruptcy lawyer friends are watching this, they're probably rolling their eyes up right now. And so the issue there really is that I think you deal with bankruptcy when you're at a situation where there's no way you're going to be able to pay off your debts, and you need some legal structure or help to manage your creditors. Closing the business is really that you're at a point where the business is not working. You are tired of losing money. You're able to essentially settle off most of your debts, and then you're going to just close up shop and end your business. And so, bankruptcy to me is much more of a, how do I continue forward knowing that I'm in massive, massive debt? And I think that's the grossly oversimplified difference.
Okay. Very interesting. I would love to hear more about that and learn more about that.
Oh, you really don't. It's very dry.
Okay. So what do you not want to do? You don't want to do the same thing over and over again and avoid your problem and get drunk in a room trying to type something. You really do want to face your fears. Again, it's easiest to ask a professional to help you talk through this, because it is really scary to look at some of this stuff or really take a serious look at your business by yourself. So yeah, don't do that. So how to close your business. We kind of danced around it a little bit, but that's why we're here. And I'm glad to hear about bankruptcy, that closing is actually is preferred if you have all your debts managed. Okay. So what does it mean to close your business? That means that your business is ending. You're going to be, that's pretty much it, right? Abid, you're closing the entity.
Yeah, I mean, look,
closing your obligations.
What it essentially means is that you are terminating business operations. Your bank account is not going to be active. You're not going to be getting any income in your business. You are done paying off your debts. Whatever debts are left, you've made arrangements with those creditors to, make payments. And then on a from a legal perspective, your business is going to dissolve, and there will no longer be a business on the books that is functioning. And then from a tax perspective, that you filed a final tax return with the IRS and letting them know that the business is no longer around, and the employer identification number will also eventually terminate. And so it's just the end of the life of a business. That's it.
It is. Yeah. And so here's a more in-depth checklist. So this is actually from the SBA's website. So if you wanted to get this yourself, you can just Google business close SBA. And I'm just going to talk through a couple of the points that I see here. Yeah, pretty much you have to make the decision first. Once you decide, don't hesitate, and choose a time frame, choose a date. Once you get that time frame out there, that's when you can start scheduling out when different things need to happen and make sure that you can take care of everything in time. How long does it usually take to close a business, would you say, Abid? Like
I mean, that's a very tricky question to answer. There's so much that goes with it. In terms of just filing that affidavit on Secretary of State, that's 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
But all the steps that lead up to it, the due diligence, the decisions, the dealing with all your creditors, all the contracts, making sure everything is finalized, doing your last set of books. I mean, it could take months to really get all that done.
Yeah, I would say months to, you're really going to have to, at the end of a year, close it out at the end of a tax year. So it's really going to take a couple months to a year plus to actually close it all out. So, yeah. And then it's different depending on the type of organization you have. So this is file dissolution documents.
Right.
So that's with the state, right? Do you have to file anything federally? Do you have to file to get the FEIN?
No, it's just the final tax return with the IRS.
And you just check that box, final tax return. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and then you have to maintain records. So that's filing any type of business. You'd have to maintain records. You're supposed to do it. It's 3 to 7 years, depending on the type of document. So just don't throw that stuff away just because your business is closed.
Yeah. So, or better yet, just scan it and put it in the cloud so you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. Put it in a zip file. No one will probably ask for it, but you will have it. Okay. And so there are a number of registrations, permits, licenses, and business names out there. There are payroll taxes, sales tax, franchise taxes. That's just for the state. You have occupational licenses, other types of permits for specific types of businesses, your licenses, and also trade names. So I guess that's something that I hadn't thought of, Abid, but they're recommend that you cancel your trade name.
Yeah, so you're whether you have a state level trade name registration or a federal trademark, once you're done terminating your business, essentially you're letting these agencies know that you're no longer using those marks. And so, and that's pretty simple to do on either a state level or a federal level. I think it's just a matter of filling out a form and sending it in. But that's part of your checklist of things you've got to do.
Okay. Yeah, and then resolve financial obligations. That is a big deal, but it's very specific for each organization. Handling final returns. So that's going to be income tax, sales tax, payroll tax, all that. Things like W-2s, 1099s are filed at the end of the year. So regardless, even if you're closing in April, you're still going to want to make sure that you have a provision or someone hired or who's going to take care of your year-end payroll reporting as well as 1099s. Including your tax return. So also you'll want to close payroll accounts and things like that. That's not as tricky as the dissolving of the entity. Usually you can close those online pretty easily. You just want to make sure that you work with your payroll company and get any last payments made. Okay, and then this is just another list of the types of registrations you have to do, but you can't close until you're in good working order already. So if you haven't filed sales tax or you're behind on your annual report, you just want to get that stuff taken care of
And
as soon
those
as
are the
possible.
kind in those situations, it's just the state that's the creditor, right? I mean, they're basically you're settling up all your debts before you can close up, and the state is just one of those.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, in conclusion, I want to thank everyone for being here. Realistically, it's really hard to look at some of these questions, but thinking through it and having a plan is going to be a way better and more, it's just going to be better if you are able to have a plan and make steps towards this process instead of just ignoring it or doing it quickly or not wanting to deal with it. So we can really be your best friends. So another thing is make sure that when you're making this decision, you're talking to your team, as well as if you have investors or other mentors in your sphere, you can lean on them for advice because it can be a little tricky.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, ultimately, I think that the main goal of closing a business for a lot of people is to protect yourself personally, protect your personal credit, protect your personal finances, as well as living to start another business another day. So, growing and starting a business is a wonderful, fun endeavor, but sometimes we want to start a different business, or sometimes this isn't the right business, or a business's life has come to an end. So if we can cut those losses in a proactive manner, then that's going to give the individual a lot more flexibility to do it again, to really learn and try something new next time, and just ultimately just protect yourself. That is ultimately my goal here.
Yep. Well said.
Anything else on that slide, Abin?
No, that's it. I think you did a good job.
Oh, there it is. I put out the wrong thing. Does anyone have any questions? Q&A from anybody? I know that Preston might have a question.
Yeah, hey guys, how's it going?
Good.
Um, First of all, thanks for getting together and talking about this. It's not, like we were saying, it's not an easy thing to discuss, to think through, and asking the right questions is important, especially when making these informed decisions. Um, a lot of these questions, y'all covered them in some way, shape, or form. Maybe they're a little bit more specific in one way. So I'm just gonna, in no specific order, I guess, ask some more of the common questions that are asked when closing. Okay, so
Sounds good.
when you're liquidating your assets, which creditors get priority for those assets? And I guess to further think through that question, what I mean, do different businesses have different like hierarchy for creditor payback? I mean, what does that look like?
Yeah, so that is a very much a bankruptcy related question. And I'm not a bankruptcy lawyer, so I'm not gonna touch that because I think it's very complex. There's a very complex set of rules that go into, if a creditor has perfected their loan, and there's a whole priority list of how certain creditors get paid back and whatnot. What I would say is that you really need to assess where you are with your business. If you're thinking about closing, you need to look at what your outstanding debts are, and then you need to have a conversation with your professionals, and then you need to kind of reach out to the creditors based on what the professionals tell you to, in terms of like how to renegotiate things, maybe get on a payment plan to make sure those debts are covered, um, or potentially take the risk that the creditors may not come after you if you've closed your business and you've operated your business with the corporate shield intact. That maybe you take the chance that they won't come after you, or if they do come after you, there's nothing to get because the business is shut down. So there's a lot of different ways that that's going to go. It's a kind of an open-ended question, but
Yeah.
if you file bankruptcy at that point, your bankruptcy attorney will tell you how those debts are going to be covered and how best to go about that way. But in either case, definitely talk to me or talk to a professional and come see us, and we can help you figure out if bankruptcy is the right option or not.
Okay. What do I do with all that personal information I have on my clients and colleagues? Where does that go? How do we handle that?
So it depends on the industry you're in. If you're in the medical industry, you're governed by HIPAA laws. If you're in, any kind of financial industry, then you've got privacy laws. If you're running a web business, then you're, covered by all the recent European Union laws and privacy laws that govern websites and web businesses. So, um, you know, you need to store those documents and that private information in a secure place. You need to hold on to that for at least 3 to 7 years, like Teresa was saying, according to the SBA, with respect to how long something might come back and question if you've done something right or wrong, if there's a lawsuit or whatnot. You need to hold on to that information in a secure place. I would strongly recommend that you password protect your PDFs, password protect your zip files, and then when you put it up in the cloud, make sure that it's not a free cloud service. Make sure that it's a paid service with a robust protection, so that you're not, that information doesn't get hacked or isn't out there. Because the worst case scenario is that someone got to that information and now you're no longer in business. You've shut down your business, and then now that information is out. Well, then you're personally liable for all the things that happen. So maybe even put it into some sort of, burn it on disk or something like that and put it away in a file somewhere, or something that's more physical. I don't know. But it's on you to keep that information safe.
Okay, one more question, Preston, because we are running out of time.
I'm sorry. Yeah, sure.
And
this is a kind of an opinion question, more of like, how would you guys handle it? What's the best way to break the news to an employee, if you have employees? I mean, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer that because I do a little bit of HR, but I mean, I would say that the first thing you want to do is decide, make the decision, keep your employee out of all that decision-making process, out of that drama. But once you've decided to make the decision to close, I just want you to take a moment to pause and think about what your employees are going through. Every business is different. The employees that you have a special relationship with them. So are these people that you've been with for 10 years? Are they new? Were they expecting the business to go on for a long time? Were they expecting promotions? Are they already mentally checked out? So a lot of that can kind of guide how intensely or how purposefully you have to tell your employees. If it's obviously someone you have a very close relationship with, you want to give them as much notice as possible. But you need to follow, there's some rules around layoffs for WARN, which is over a certain number of employees, you have to actually provide certain amounts of notice, and that varies by state. But for the most part, you would just provide, we're in an at-will state, so you want to just provide adequate notice and pay the obligations that you are required to pay, including, vacation, sick days, and all the hours that they worked. Provide those within a reasonable time frame after the last date, but you just want to be in constant contact. I would say a month is plenty of time, and maybe generous in some situations. It depends on the relationship you have with your employees.
Yeah, I think it really makes a big difference on the situation, the relationship, and the type of job, how long they've been with you. But in my mind, and I go through this a lot with a lot of different scenarios, but I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill. And there's a scene where Jonah Hill has to let a player know that he's been traded to another team. It's a baseball movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's freaking out and he's like, what do I do? And he goes to Brad Pitt, and Brad Pitt says, that this guy's a professional. Just give them the information they need to know. Let them know what the next step is.
Mm-hmm.
Say thanks and good luck, and that's it. And it's a great scene that if you can find on YouTube. Again, I'm a big fan of taking the emotional components out, because at the end of the day, business decisions have to be made, and firing somebody is never easy.
It's harder and worse if you get emotional as
Yeah.
well as delivering that information.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be very detailed.
Yeah. So, but that's it for me. I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for thank you so much for inviting me to this, and I enjoyed the topics and the conversation, and I hope this was helpful to our viewers.
Yeah, this was really fun. Yeah, I just wanted to say a couple of things. You know, you can follow all three of our businesses on social media. You can follow our newsletters. We're always trying to provide information and be of service to the community. But ultimately, Abid and I are here to help. So he wants to help with all types of. Do you want to just describe what you want to help with? I was going to say legal stuff, but
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I mean, Sternberg, Knackery and White is a full service business law firm. And so we can help with a lot of these issues. The earlier you contact us, the better we can help you. And I think that phone number is an older number for me.
sorry.
Let me just give my correct information. So it's Abid at snw.law. I don't work for Saturday
Sorry.
Night
I'm
Live.
sorry, it's the last slide.
It's Abid at snw.law. And my phone number is 504-383-0716 is my office number. And so if I can help with any of the questions here, or if there's any business related issues, or if you're even just thinking about making some changes, the sooner you get a hold of me, the better I can help guide you down that path.
Yeah, and if you don't have bookkeeping and are not sure where to start figuring out if your business is profitable, calling me would be a good first stop. If you're also questioning, you know, how many debts do you have? What's the financial position of your business? I would love to help you with that. So you can go to my website, office-ops.com, and click Get Started, and it will help you set up a call with me. Okay. Well,
All
this
right,
was
great.
super fun. Thank you, Abid. I really
All right,
appreciate it.
take
Thank
care.
you, Preston. Thank you, Fun 17. And thank you for everyone who attended. Good to see you all.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.